Okay, so I'm gonna try to get this as quick as possible. Sorry for the extravagant amount of noise in the background coming from likely trucks, because people in my country don't understand that honking is not a way of protest, it's just a way of getting people pissed off at you. Regardless, the new chapter of OLA or Last Armageddon, I finally get the name right, um, has dropped. And I'm gonna say it outright. It feels a lot smaller, and it is a lot smaller. It has less space, has less words. But hey, I'm not one to judge a book by its length. Sometimes he just opted for a more optimal way of storytelling. You know, for a modern chapter, I definitely feel that they're trying to do their best with what they got. So, for you who don't know, OLA or Lester Mageddon, I'm gonna have to keep clarifying that because OLA doesn't sound like this story name. It sounds like a weird acronym. But yeah, it's an acronym because I'm not gonna say or Lester Mageddon every time referring to the story. Um, the story as a whole is just basically an in between that fleshes out RK and hopefully his lackeys a bit more. In this story, we follow the wake of Blade, which now is currently pushed to the side or favor of the story. So here's the thing: Chapter 2 introduced two concepts that I kinda saw coming, but I'm glad that I actually could see them coming because otherwise they'd feel very sudden. But yeah, introduced two major plot details that I'm very glad they're in. First one is the Chaos Watchers actually starting the Radiance Protocol. Now, for you guys who don't know, the Radiance Protocol was a concept introduced a while back in one of the Spencer's most early stories, and it is essentially a betrayal protocol. Essentially, and this goes for both cases. It is a protocol created for an organization that's using a powerful metahuman to kill that metahuman as soon as either it becomes obsolete or too much of a risk to keep alive. In all cases, it was usually some other metahuman that I'm not gonna get into detail because if dispensers likely excluded that story from reality, not even I can find any archives of it, so it's only existing in my memory. Yeah, he doesn't want that out. But regardless, in this case, the Radiance Protocol applies to Champion, aka the alternate version of Hilda that RK gave special cocaine to. For you guys who don't know, which is likely everyone, because like two people watch these stories, and if you are watching from somewhere else, how did you find me? Regardless, it is pretty damn weird because she's extremely powerful. She can move through time stops, she's not affected by most reality bending, and she's canonically one of the few beings that has complete immortality, aka if you vanquish her body, she'll literally, and it's not my words, is what the Spencer described to me, she'll quite literally reforge herself into reality out of her own sheer fucking will. So yeah, she's very dangerous. And the Radiance Protocol in this case is mastered by Victoria, and the plan is simple: kill that bitch before she can go rogue. Because a very prominent thing that Champion doesn't need anyone she allies with. She's extremely powerful on her own and she just doesn't need anyone else. And that comes a bit around when you realize that the Chaos Watchers are using her to kind of put fear into their enemy's heart and likely after go to Arky. Kill the guy because she can harm him. Regardless, the main issue seems to be that Champion is not interested in keeping this alliance after she gets her goals, and so they realize that pretty goddamn quickly. So their plan is simple: apply the Radiance Protocol, which dictates that every single attempt, every single shot you can take at Champion that may kill or null her abilities for long enough for them to live peaceful lives until it eventually comes crashing down, should be taken. If you can hurt her, you should hurt her. And this protocol has a branch of multiple sub-projects that essentially are like mini ways of trying to combat her in different scenarios. Now, I'm gonna go over it and I'm gonna essentially explain some of them. Spoilers, because again, the Spencer cannot keep his mouth shut a lot, so I know a lot about stuff that's yet to come. Still, I'm kinda excited because all those ideas sound interesting in concept, so I'm having kinda high hopes for the story. The main protocols that I'm gonna focus are the ones that are gonna get used first, of course, because they were most thought out. There is the Icarus protocol, which is essentially put champion into a base, contain her there with a special set of devices that are specially created to keep her down long enough, and then essentially you're gonna trap her in the station, and using light speed, you're gonna essentially just throw the thing into the nearest star. Doesn't matter how big, doesn't matter how small, just crush that thing against the surface of a burning sun and hope that kills champion, or at least traps her in a prison of plasma for long enough. The second protocol is called Boy Scout, and it essentially is the one I'm kind of curious about because it essentially is baiting Hilda. Sorry, I say Hilda, but it's because Champion is an alternate version of Hilda. But regardless, is essentially baiting Champion into fighting another meta-human, and in this case, which is essentially just Superman, but, recontextualized. And is essentially just baiting her into fighting the most powerful meta-human, superhuman, whatever they can find, and that hopefully will entice the other superhuman enough to it is hell bent on killing Champion, and that should hopefully lock the two in an endless crusade. Remember, they don't really care about the consequences to the world that Champion will be imprisoned in. They just care that this bitch dies or is sent away from an endless period of time. They cannot send her to black holes because of a reason that, is not elaborated, but, I hope we'll get there. And finally, we have the Armageddon Protocol, which is a project that essentially basically sent Champion to a world that's ending completely on a universal scale. Armageddon events are a thing that have been happening, they just haven't been mentioned, and honestly I don't blame the author because, the story is not exactly focused on the operations and classifications, so, Armageddon events are new, but it's explained, it's kind of justified why they aren't prevalent. Essentially, send Champion to an Armageddon event, which is, again, essentially a universe-ending scenario. Time collapses, and Armageddon essentially dictates that everything involving their reality will just be gone. From time to history to anything inside that barrier, that little part of reality will just be completely erased without ways of recover. Send her to it and combat her there. Armageddon events come in a variety of ways. They can come into, complete time stops that are completely irreversible and the world will just be stuck in place. They can come into the form of giant black holes that grow so big they eventually collapse the universe on itself and become the sad universe. And it can be something just as simple as a massive experiment gone wrong that eradicates all life in the universe. Regardless, the planet sample of Armageddon Protocol is probably the least expensive of them, so I reckon it will be tried first. Just essentially send Champion to a world that's already ending so they don't have to worry about her ever coming back. Put her there, keep her there long enough for the Armageddon event to officially take place, and hopefully a universe-ending scenario will either kill her for good or will trap her in that universe without her way of accessing main timelines. So yeah, this is basically what the new chapter introduces. I feel like this is more an introduction chapter to the Radiance Protocol and to the events that will take place. I'm kind of excited to see how it goes and how Victoria will avoid, because, once you try to kill someone once, you kind of expect them to be on high alert, and if it's Champion, you kind of expect her to immediately go after Victoria and kill her, like the good old days. But I'm excited to see how it goes. I feel like this will tie into the main story of the Alphas, of course, because, it's Champion, and she's canonically classified as one of the few entities that can actually harm the Alphas in a meaningful and irreversible way, mostly because she's completely immune to time stops and stuff, and she cannot be reverted back to her normal stage, and in a way, she's the perfect antithesis. She's pretty fucking powerful. So yeah, peace.